So Thom is going to show us how he shot this photo. Hey, what's going on YouTube? My name is Mo from Bahrain, and if you'd like to learn more about car photography and Photoshop, then go ahead and subscribe now so you don't miss out on all the cool stuff that I create every week. So it's been such a crazy couple of weeks really. I've been shooting for Audi and I can't show you what I've done so far. But hey, if you're following me on Instagram, you might see it very soon. So another successful collaboration, this time all the way from England with Thom. Thom is going to show us how he shot this McLaren with Godox AD600. Now, if you're not familiar with Thom and his work, I really do recommend that you follow him on Instagram. He posts a lot of amazing photos, and he does post behind the scenes in his story. So go ahead, give him a follow. Now, if you're a car photographer and you would like to add value and collaborate with me, then go ahead and send me a direct message on Instagram, or send me an email. You can find my email on Instagram as well. All right, enough of this. Let me hand it over to Thom.
What's up guys? My name's Thom and I'm an automotive photographer from the UK, and I'm super lucky because Mo has asked me to show you all how I shot this quite gorgeous McLaren 720S. So first of all, I should say I'm relatively new to car photography, and this shoot was actually the first shoot I'd done with a proper light, with a strobe, and I shot the car with a Godox AD600 BM strobe. It was the first shoot I'd done with one of those, but absolutely loved using the light. And the reason I chose to use the light was because, as you can see from this base exposure, that it was a very light location, and I really wanted to create some kind of a hard shadow on one of the walls to give the image, to make the image really dynamic and have lots of contrast. So I wanted to use a powerful light, and the Godox gave me the power that I needed to do that. Normally I light paint, but using strobe has kind of made these shots really come to life. So as you can see from this shot, I always take a base exposure when I'm shooting on location. It just gives me something as a reference to go back to and pull out any details I need to from the base for ambient light, and I've always got it there as a safety if I need it. So shot this at f11, which I know is a sweet spot for my lens. I'm using the Tamron 24-70 2.8, and I know that's a great sweet spot in the lens at f11. Wanted to get the car nice and sharp and in focus. Shooting at 40mm, as you can see here, and I couldn't get much further back than that. I normally like to use a slightly longer focal length than that, but couldn't get much further back than this. So I was at 40mm, but pretty pleased with how that's worked out. And then I bring all my exposures into Lightroom. I know a lot of people use Camera Raw. I'm still using Lightroom. I just prefer sometimes the way that I can lay out the images and have visibility of them. So what I did on the shoot was basically went around the vehicle. I knew I wanted to create a hard shadow on one of those walls. So if we just look at one of these exposures here, yeah, here we go. So these are my various exposures that I took to create that really hard shadow that we've got on I ended up with on the right hand wall, and you can see over here. So yeah, decided that my light source was going to be coming from this side. Hard shadow on this side of the wall, which I thought looked really cool with those doors open. And then basically what I'm doing is, after I've taken the base exposure, is kind of moving around the car and lighting each panel or section one at a time with a separate exposure. So here you go, you can see this is one of the exposures that I took for the front wheel. Here we've got an exposure with the lights, so that's with no strobe and just with the lights on to paint the lights in later. We've got ones here for the rear 3/4 of the car. Separate exposure. You can see me here with the strobe, stretching to get a nice high kind of light down on these doors, and basically just kind of working my way around the car, picking out details that I know that I'm going to want to use in the final shot. So a nice bit of light on the front here, slightly brighter one here for the splitter, bit of depth and a bit of a different angle on the bonnet if I needed that. So basically just going through and getting all the options that I could possibly need. And to be honest with you, I've probably got, oh, you can see interior shot there, so that's to make the interior nice and bright. I've probably got more shots than I need here, so we've got about 19, 20 shots in this collection here. But as I said, it was the first time I was using the light, so I was being super cautious and kind of got more exposure than I needed to. Only do basic exposure adjustments in Lightroom, so I think on this I've just literally just bumped the sharpness a little bit. Yeah, a bit of sharpness put in there, and I've adjusted the noise reduction a little bit to reduce the noise on the image. Always shooting at 100 ISO, obviously, to keep the noise down, but just wanted a little bit more noise reduction in there. So once I've got the images and I've chosen the exposures that I want, I usually put a color flag on those, slightly different color flag for my base image, and then my basic Lightroom adjustments done, and I'm going to open all of those images into Photoshop. So select all those images, right click, and we're going to edit, and we're going to open those as layers in Photoshop. Okay, so now all the raw files are loaded into Photoshop as opened in one document in lots of layers. And then what I'll normally do is basically go through each image and obviously label the image as to what that is. Just makes it a lot easier when you're going to be editing the image later on. And also what it's really important to do at this stage is just check that all your images are aligned correctly as well. So you can do that in Photoshop with auto align, but it's not always that accurate, so I always go and check it manually as well. Just make sure that your layers are lined up correctly. So to save a bit of time, I've labeled all the layers and put them into a separate document. So here we go. I usually put my base layer at the bottom, so that's the exposure that I've got with ambient, and then next up from that I've got the base layer of the lighting layers that I want to use. So I've called that one Nice Shadow because it has got this really cool shadow at this side. And then basically what I'm going to start doing is using layer mask and blend modes to start painting in some of the layers that I'm going to use for that. So if we just take, for example, this layer here, Nice Bonnet, just because we want to take a layer that we can show you something cool happening on. So first of all, I'm going to change the blend mode on that layer to lighten, and that basically just means that you're only showing the lightest parts of the layer. And then I'm going to create a new layer mask on that layer, invert that layer mask, so Command I to invert the layer mask, and then basically I'm going to use your white brush over here, so swap that over to white, and then basically just paint in that light that we created on the bonnet. So you can see I'm just doing this really, really roughly to give you an idea of how it's going to work. So that's the bonnet painted in, and then perhaps we'll do the front splitter as well. So you can see that's super bright here, but we'll change the blend mode to lighten, and we'll create another layer mask, and we'll invert the mask, Command I or Control I if you're on Windows, and you can see with a white brush again, just painting those details in that we're going to use for the final edit. So that's the front splitter, and again just doing this really roughly. I do this much neater when I'm doing it obviously properly for the edit, and I'll also cut out the car, and that makes it a bit easier to stick to the edges of the vehicle, so create a path around the car as well. If you find, like in this instance here, you've got a really super strong highlight somewhere, the best way to deal with that is to create an adjustment layer on top. So let's create a brightness and contrast adjustment layer. So bring the brightness down to where you want. So okay, so that split is looking kind of cool now. It looks all right in terms of the brightness. So close that, and then right click, and you're going to create a clipping mask so that that brightness and contrast is only applying to the layer below it, which is the front splitter. And you can see there, so that's just, if I click that on and off, you can see that just bringing the layer brightness down. Cool. So once you've gone that and you've gone through all your layers and you've painted in the areas of light where you want them, you should hopefully have something a little bit like this. So this is the next stage in my Photoshop process. So you can see here we've got all the layers with the names. Sometimes I have changed the names of layers depending on how the process has gone, and if I want to refer to them with something more specific. Or I've also deleted a couple of layers if I found that I've imported them and I've not actually used those layers. I will delete them to try and make the file a bit smooth, a bit smaller. Sorry, but you can see here these are the layers that I've got the layer masks and also the adjustment layers on top of those. So this is the image with all the lighting aspects that I want to get sorted at this point. So once I'm happy with that, I'm happy with how the light looks on every panel of the car, and I'm happy with the shadows that I've got, and I'm happy with the way the light's falling in the background. What I do at this stage then is I'm going to flatten the image, basically because I want to do a proper retouch in the image now. I'm working on it at this file size, which at the moment is 2.2 gig, is quite heavy going for the machine and quite slow. So basically just flatten the image by going up to layer and flatten image here. I'm not going to do that on this file, but I can show you the next file in the process. So this is the next stage, and what you'll actually notice is jumping between those two shots, a few things have happened. So first of all, the car has magically got lower. Now that is because when I was shooting the car, the person who had the vehicle had driven it off a ramp, and it had been left in its highest position in terms of the body position, and actually we'd forgotten to put the car back to its lowest position. So rather annoyingly, I had to cut around the whole of the car and lower the car in Photoshop as well. So I've just brought the whole of the body down, so you can see actually that car fixed layer is showing you the before and after on the position of the car, and I had to clone out some background around there as well, to make sure that none of the background showed. Once I'd lowered the position of the car, there wasn't some old bits of car showing at the top. Also retouch the background, so you can see if I just click that on and off, we've got a few bits of things that I didn't want showing the background. So we've got a bottle here, some kind of plug sockets and some branding at the back of the wall, things that I wanted to get rid of. Also, I didn't really like the way it just had one kind of roof beam at the top, because the rest of the image felt relatively nice when the two walls were relatively symmetrical. So I felt it was needed to have two in. So I basically just duplicated that one side and brought it across. And at this point I thought, oh, that's pretty cool, I quite like that, it's quite a nice image, but I felt like it was missing something. So and what I do a lot of the time is I'll save an image to my phone and have a look at it for a while or a day or so, just to check how I'm feeling. I wasn't quite happy with it, and actually asked another photographer for their opinion, and I'm quite lucky because I was able to shoot with George Williams late last year, or GF Williams as you guys probably know him as, and was lucky that George was able to give me some advice on the image, and he thought that what it was missing was a bit of colour. And yeah, the penny dropped. He's much more experienced than I am, and I thought that was a really great idea. So I added some colour into the image, and let me just show you how that worked. So firstly, I felt like that pillar on the left was distracting, so that's gone. And then secondly, basically, I started to add some colour and darken the background a little bit, added a bit of vignette into the side as well. And then this layer here is my colour adjustment for the background, which is this kind of nice teal colour. And basically the client for the image, their logo was this kind of teal colour, which is why I've chosen to use that colour, because I thought it worked well for the images that I was providing to them. And basically I just added a colour adjustment layer onto the background there. Also added a bit more light at the side with a bit of a light leak. Just felt it gave it a little bit more atmosphere and gave the shadow a bit more kind of realism and placement, that there was a kind of a bright light source happening over this side. And that's pretty much it actually. Oh, I've got also on here I've got some color fixes as well for the color of the car. The car is actually this really cool, like kind of slightly bluish tint to the white color of the car. So I wanted to make sure that was added in. And there were a couple of other bits where I'd had some yellow tones in the bonnet that were getting lost. So I just brought those back in, and I just brushed those in with some color and used an overlay blend mode on those. So that's pretty much it. That's the final shot, as you can see in Lightroom. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Thanks again to Mo for having me on the channel. And yeah, I hope you guys learned something. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Thom. And I have to say, for someone who has been light painting and using the strobe for the first time, this is such an amazing shot. Hats off to you, my friend. Now, if you have any questions to Thom, you can leave it in the comment section below, or head over to his Instagram and start buggering him with questions. All right, YouTube, we've reached the end of this video. Don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.